Well, King Kong was certainly a breakthrough because it used the Wagnerian leitmotif, which is not the first time that was done, but this was on a big scale. And of course, there was more music during that picture, with the exception. And it was done in a symphonic manner, but done in an unusual manner because you're dealing with the bizarre and the fantasy. So it wasn't just, beautiful music or just a lot of dissonance. It was a little bit of everything, because you had the tender, you had the Fay Wray theme, you had the love theme, and the Beauty and the Beast, and you had all of these elements working, but in that Wagnerian mode, the leitmotif. So it was a breakthrough in many ways, and of course it was probably the most, at that time, the most, let's say, advanced score in terms of what music would bring to the film. And of course it was noticed, because the picture was so well received in so many ways, both critically and audience-wise, that it got a lot of notice. And that's very unusual. The music wasn't always even brought up in the review, It wasn't, and Max Steiner's score. But in this case, it was brought up. And of course, it was a very important breakthrough at that time.
Do you think that King Kong would have been a success without this music, actually?
I think that if you turn off the sound when you're watching King Kong on television or DVD or what have you, you realize how much the sound contributes to that film. And I'm not just speaking of the music, but the sound effects and everything else that were designed for it. But as a silent movie, it loses a great deal. And I think that if Steiner hadn't done that score, that it would have lost a great deal in the total effect. And of course, fortunately, all of it works and is meshed, between the music, the sound effects, and the special effects, and of course the pacing and everything else. But you couldn't lose the music. And it's, again, if you ever want to test it, you'll find out for yourself. And again, we're talking about, King Kong, who's 18 feet high, and he's stop motion. He's ball and socket and works frame at a time. So realism is very difficult, but the music and the sound effects makes it work.
Steiner says he used, for example, the click track system for King Kong climbing up the Empire State Building. Was he actually the one who was the first to use click track for film?
Now the click track, which of course is a metronome-like device that the musicians would hear and the conductor would hear of his earphones, that allowed you to sync very carefully what was going on visually on the screen with what you were doing with the music. And of course, as to who first used it, it's a little murky. Steiner was certainly one of the first, and certainly adapted it to his needs, because he felt strongly that certain things require exact synchronization. In fact, later on they called it Mickey Mousing, because it was done in animated cartoons where the music would catch whatever was happening there, and it evolved into, that's the way you do an animated cartoon. Well, Steiner was not doing that, but he was doing it on occasion, and catching the club foot, and catching the water dripping, and the informing, and catching people going, where he felt that it was appropriate to be right in sync where every note that you're playing. So of course the musicians would have that, so you'd hear that tick, 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 or slower or fast, but it would have already been calibrated and calculated so that it would work in conjunction with that particular scene. Now that was not always the case. I mean, there were places where you could be, flowing and not have to worry about the click track.